What is your darkest family secret? A year or two after her adoptive mother died, my mom went looking for information about her birth parents and found that her birth mom and her husband had been gruesomely murdered by a drug cartel. There was an article about their murder in Rolling Stone magazine that had gory pictures of their bodies. Must have been really shocking to her. Hope she's well now. One family member killed another by leaving a bag of poisoned donuts on the front steps. We are now hesitant about accepting donuts. No one in my family can give me an honest answer on how many siblings I have. Same. My father is 72 and I'm early 20s. He has about 8 kids that I know of. The youngest is 15 and the oldest is 49. My brother from my mother's side recently said he ran into my sister from my father's side. I had no idea W. Harloch was. Most of the family members I ask just say they've lost track. Exclamation mark. Edit. It definitely doesn't seem like a cultural thing since we live in NSW, Australia. Liar. In the film Driving Miss Daisy, when the chauffeur, played by Morgan Freeman, is driving Miss Daisy to worship service, they get stuck in a traffic jam. He gets out to see what the holdup is. When he gets back in, he says you won't be going to service today. Somebody done bombed the temple. Hebrew Benevolent Congregation Temple, Atlanta, 1958. She says what? W. Holler told do such a th. My uncle. Claire. That's who. Wasn't everyone acquitted in this case? Did your uncle ever admit to doing the bombing? Was he the main suspect? Sorry. That's a lot of questions. He was one of the 5 men arrested, but not the one tried and acquitted twice. I don't know if he ever confessed, but he was definitely the black sheep of the otherwise normal family. My dad, his sisters, and my other uncle rarely mentioned him, at least not while my cousins and I were around. But when I was little, I remember one of my older cousins saying something about my uncle and a church bombing. I thought better of asking dad about it, and basically forgot about it. Then, a few years ago, Elle was listening to the Missed in History podcast, and they did an episode on the bombing. When they listed the names of the men that were arrested, a giant light bulb went off in my head. My great-grandfather shot and killed a man in his grocery store back in the 30s over a poker game. He ran a speakeasy out of the back of his store and lost almost $2K, so as the guy was walking out the front after the store closed he shot him and got away with it by telling the police the man robbed him. It wasn't until he was on his deathbed he told my grandfather what had happened. My dad gave a job to a cousin. I remember as a kid that this cousin I'd never heard of just suddenly popped up out of nowhere without explanation, but I was a kid so didn't really think of it. But everyone made a big deal out of how great it was for my dad to give him a job. I found out 20 years later that he'd been in prison for having a sexual relationship with a student. My dad died of a drug overdose when he was only 25. I was 6 months old. Our family and his hid the true reason and told everyone it was a heart attack. This is even what I grew up thinking. Only my mom, my aunt, 2 uncles, and my 4 grandparents knew the real cause. I found out the real cause of his death when I had to get his death certificate for college financial aid, and now I'm burdened with continuing the light of the greater community. W. Harloch knew him. My dad's cousin killed a dude and his 9-year-old son in a cocaine rage in 1990. He was living in my parents' basement at the time. Investigators first questioned my dad, and then they found my cousin's bloody shoes in the house. The dude used to babysit me and my siblings. I didn't know any of this until I was almost an adult. He used to call me from prison on our shared birthday and it always gave me the creeps. Stopped answering when I discovered the truth. My dad and grandma swear he is innocent, but I read into the case. He's definitely not. Edit a word. Father won the lottery and we've been pretending to be poor, so our family doesn't try to ask for money. Imanid about Trifidi. My brother shot himself in the leg to get out of Iraq and tried to blame it on an enemy attack. I learned about this the day I arrived in Afghanistan for my year-long tour. All I heard was that he was shot. I found out later it was a self-inflicted wound and he was out on suicide watch and was kicked out with a less than honorable discharge. Has never actually told anyone this. I just heard it through the National Guard, being kind of like a gossipy small town. I actually don't hold it against him. War sucked. Has absolutely ruined his life since then by becoming an alcoholic and sitting the world out. Just sad all around. Also, my mom and her sister married the same man, so all my siblings are also cousins with each other. My mom walked in on my uncle servicing the best man a night before he married my aunt. This was the mid 1960s. So being bi or gay wasn't something many people admitted to. She said nothing to anyone. Only told my dad years later. Edit. Wow. This blew up. I thought about deleting it because it's not really a dark family secret. Thank you for the nice comments and awards. I had an uncle W. Harlot moved far away. Worked in a boiler room at a huge casino. Decades ago. He was always sketchy, shy, and he had way more money than a simple boiler room employee ought to have had. Rumors that the boiler room was a really useful thing for the mob due to boilers doubling as incinerators for certain purposes. SEs. Hence the money. Many unanswered questions there. Yeah. Guess it's kinda obvious that your uncle got paid to look the other way while the mob used the boiler room to cook their pizzas. I want him thin crust. My grandma has been having an affair with a family friend's husband for 28 years. Damn. What does your grandma do to family enemies? That's a lifetime of lies and betrayal. Had an uncle that was a sharpshooter in the US Navy, and there's a famous movie about a mission he was on. He was also bad sugakrasi and beat his kids and was a serious hoarder. My great-great-grandparents were cousins. I don't have wiggly bones, so I guess I'm alright. If it was only one generation, and if grandparents aren't related, it probably won't affect you at all. Physically at least. Jar Jar Binks is my favorite character though. So that was it. My great aunt had a thing for this guy. The problem was that this guy happened to be married. That little detail didn't stop my great aunt. So what did she do? Well, she killed the man's wife. Apparently when he went off to work early one morning, she broke into the house and killed the woman by sawing her off head. Then she cleaned up the mess, buried the body in the backyard, tidied the house up, cooked dinner and waited for the man to come home. When he got home he noticed the house was a bit different. Out comes my great to greet him. This was the first time the man had met my great aunt. And what did this man do? Well, he thought it was a great gesture of love. They called the police and he covered up for my great aunt's crime. Says he did it. He gets arrested and spends a couple of years in prison and then bribes his way out. He moves into his old home with my great aunt and they had a happy marriage for over 40 years later until he passed away from natural causes. As part of opening a home daycare, mom found somebody on the sex offender registry with our family's very unusual last name. Mom called grandpa. He confirmed that he is related to us. He hadn't seen him in decades. He didn't know he had been convicted for statutory, but thought that sounded about right. We are not supposed to ask about him again. My cousin sexually abused me when I was 7. He was 17, and it messed me up, and now I have to pretend I'm happy he's getting the organ transplant he needs. I hope he fucking dies. It's me. My dad never told his family I existed. I was shameful. Maybe he was more ashamed. After he died they found out about me and kindly asked me not to come to the funeral. I get why he never told them. I expect this is what will happen with my brother. My mom met and fell in love with a guy while attending college when she was in her late 20s. And they moved in together in his hometown on another continent. Eventually I moved in with them. Everything was going well. I was enrolled in a new school. They were both working, etc. She wound up getting pregnant. He was the son of a prominent family, and we lived in an area with a distinct culture from our own. The family didn't want their only son married to my mom, and definitely didn't want him to have a blended family, but he seemed to be fine with it, loved my mom, reassured her. We traveled home for the holidays, and soon thereafter received a ton of packages. My mom realized he had shipped all of our things back to us. She was blindsided. I've heard conflicting stories from my mom, my aunt, etc. But according to my aunt, he said my mom could come back if she had an abortion. My mom said his family offered to take the baby, but she could never have contact with it. She said that he probably would have had a life full of privilege, but she couldn't part with her baby, and she couldn't imagine what people Holla told put her in that position might do to her baby someday. My mom kept the baby and never saw the man or his family again. My brother has only spoken to him once, and that was because him and Ashatan tracked the guy down when I was 11, and my brother said all he wanted was to talk to his dad one time. So I facilitated it, not thinking about what it meant. The man is a fucking pussy. Now the dad is a worship leader at a church and works for his family's business, which is pathetically outdated and small compared to my dad's older, bigger business. Sorry, I'm prideful. One of his parents already died, never knowing their amazing grandson. They judge the sugar out of my mom. Holatis Boti, Eiffel, intelligent, gent, works hard, and has accomplished so much for herself. She's more successful than her ex now, by far, and they're oblivious to the fact that no amount of money can compensate for their behavior, making them nothing better than swine. Their actions completely contradict their reputation and how they present themselves publicly. My dad isn't perfect by a long shot, but has shown more of an interest in my brother, more kindness, and spent more time with him than my brother's own dad. Please click subscribe if you enjoyed this video.